Newsmaker Sunday with Fox 10's John Hook.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Sunday. Glad to have back a representative from Congressional District 9, Kyrsten Sinema. She's been elected since first elected in 2012, member of the Democratic Party, as you know, and has served in both houses of the Arizona legislature, first the House and then the Senate, and now on to the U.S. House of Representatives. Good to see you again.
Great to be here.
We got a lot on our plate, and I want to start with news that broke on Thursday. Dreamers are going to be offered in-state tuition, as we show tape number 5. This has been a battle, has it not? And Tom Horne started the battle when community colleges started offering in-state tuition for DACA kids. And now the state universities have followed suit as of Thursday. What do you make of this?
Well, I think it's the important thing to know here is that a judge recently determined that Dreamers who've applied for and received DACA, which is a legal document, legal recognition from the federal government, doesn't grant them citizenship or even a path to citizenship, but it does allow those young people to have temporary work permits.
Right.
And what the judge said recently was that if you have that temporary work permit, then you qualify for in-state tuition, just like other work permit holders qualify. So I think it makes sense. But the good news, John, is that this means that lots of really bright kids in Arizona, these are kids who are valedictorians, salutatorians of their schools, can get to college and hopefully work their way into good paying jobs right here in Arizona.
Kids in a sense that we've already invested in.
Oh yeah, these kids all have graduated from Arizona high schools. So we've been teaching these kids, elementary school, middle school, and high school. And now we're saying to these kids, we want you to stay here in Arizona rather than go to another country and keep that investment that we've made right here in our state.
So you're saying it's an economic, it's a asset-based decision.
This is an economic benefit for our state.
What do you say to those people who say, look, these folks, if it's not them, their parents broke the law to get here. We shouldn't be rewarding this kind of behavior. What do you say to people who make that argument?
Well, anyone who's going to punish a kid for something that their parents are responsible for, I think that's not very fair. We wouldn't want it to happen to you or me, right?
That's a loaded question.
Right? So,
just turned the tables on me. Unbelievable.
In fact, the rest of the interview, I'm going to be interviewing you.
Okay, excellent. That would be nice. All right, let's talk about the VA hospital, because this has been an issue you have really been involved in.
That's right.
Is this thing getting any better in your view? I mean, we're a year and a half or 2 years into this now, where we know about the secret wait lists and all the nonsense. And the vets are getting screwed. That's the bottom line.
You're absolutely right. And, you know, when the brave whistleblowers came forth on April 9th of last year, I and many others stood up immediately and said, this is outrageous. It's un-American. It's immoral. Veterans died waiting for care. And we've seen some modest
Your brother
reforms.
went through this.
Yeah, my big brother is a veteran. So is my stepdad. So is my grandpa. My little brother is still active duty. But this could happen to him one day, too, when he leaves the service in the Navy. So this is something I take very, very seriously and very personally. So when the news broke last year, we joined together in a bipartisan way to take action in Congress to change the law, to make it easier to fire bad managers, to protect whistleblowers, to reform the system so veterans get care immediately instead of having to wait months and months. And while some areas we've seen modest progress, there are some areas where it's actually gotten a little bit worse. For instance, in 2014, veterans who called a hotline to get help with their benefits, about 55% of them were getting their calls dropped. This year, it's 59%.
It's gotten worse.
It's gotten worse.
Why is that? What is happening?
It's hard to tell. You know, we've been asking for that data, and I wrote a letter to the VA and said, do a review, do an analysis, find out what's going wrong. And they responded back that they've hired an outside group, J.D. Power and Associates, to do a review. But that was in February, and here we are in May, and I haven't gotten a response yet.
You know, as a Democrat, you believe, you would agree with me on this, that you believe government is there to solve problems, right?
Well, that's really government's function, is to keep people safe and to solve problems that folks can't solve on their own.
Does this shake your foundation a little bit in big government?
Oh,
that some of these programs, they're so unwieldy, they cannot be run very well. they're impossible to manage.
Well, you show me an Arizonan who supports big government, and I'll show you someone who's not an Arizonan. All right, this is just not who we are as a people. But I think what we see at the VA is a bureaucracy that has a culture that serves itself rather than serving veterans.
Do you think that this is not only VA-wide, but government-wide?
I think we're seeing this in lots of agencies.
We're seeing the abuses of government credit cards that we heard about on Thursday.
Oh, my goodness.
People are spending
Illegal
government credit cards on gambling and prostitutes.
That's totally
illegal. And we're
illegal.
paying for this.
Well, and we see it in other agencies too. You know, I had a big battle that I fought with the HUD agency, which is the housing department, on behalf of some individuals who are deaf and hard of hearing in Tempe. We won that fight, but it took us a year and a half to protect those citizens from an agency that is supposed to be helping individuals, but really was engaging in policies that were hurting people with disabilities. It makes no sense.
Circling back to the VA, Sharon Hellman, who was the director, you know now she's suing. She's trying to figure out why she was terminated.
That's outrageous. You know, Director Hellman wasn't even fired for the original allegations, which was manipulation of wait time data. She was ultimately fired for accepting gifts improperly, taking her family to Disneyland, things that are clearly unethical and not legal. The fact that she's suing is outrageous.
So
I mean, it's outrageous.
When you see this stuff as a member of Congress, do you lose faith in what we're trying to do here in this country?
No, we can't lose faith. In fact, my job as a member of Congress is to keep the faith and fight to fix the system so that the veterans who just get up each day and want to get the care that they've earned, that those veterans can depend on getting the health care that they are rightfully deserving of.
And you're seeing that Republicans are working with you on this.
Oh, yes.
The Arizona delegation is completely on board with this, right?
That's right.
Everybody's on board.
That's right. And it's more than just our delegation, it's the whole country. So just a week and a half ago, I introduced a bill with Chairman Jeff Miller. He's the Republican chairman of the committee. And you know what he said was, you know, the VA got power to fire people more quickly when we passed the choice bill last August. But not a single person in the country has been fired from the VA for manipulation of wait time data. There are two Phoenix employees. I don't know.
Is this an HR deal?
Well, the secretary says that there's due process and it takes a long time and blah, blah, blah. And so what Jeff and I said was, we'll help you solve this. We introduced legislation a week and a half ago that speeds up the process, still protects due process for the accused, but allows the secretary to take swift action to solve the problem so we can hire good people to care for these veterans.
When these people are fired, if they are ever fired, do they continue to get pension and benefits?
Well, we've actually introduced legislation that says no, you shouldn't. And Jeff and I have introduced and passed legislation through the House to claw back their bonuses that they received through false pretenses. But another issue we're working on...
Right, because if you're manipulating wait times, everything looks hunky-dory, and this is a reason that some of this stuff happens.
And you didn't earn that money. You're stealing that money from veterans. So I'll give you an example. Two of the individuals who were put on administrative leave on May 1st of 2014 for allegations of manipulation of wait time data, John, they're still on administrative leave. These two individuals together have made over $250,000 sitting at home not doing anything.
So we're paying for their vacation.
We're paying for it. So we want to fix that and say, get rid of these guys, hire good people, and we want to get back that money for the system, for veterans.
Let me ask you about something that I thought was really, really interesting that you're involved in. You're involved in some kind of legislation calling for rewriting testing in public schools.
Oh, yes.
So that you would be tested annually in grades 3 through 8, and then once in high school. You think there's too much testing going on? Too much class time burned in testing, or what is the problem?
Well, the bill that we've introduced, and I introduced with Representative Chris Gibson from New York, a Republican, and there's a companion bill in the Senate that's also bipartisan. It's called grade span testing. And what the idea is that you would have federal testing that's mandated every several years over grade spans to hit the benchmarks. Now, states and local governments could still choose to do all the testing they want to do locally. But what this does is return that control back to the states and back to the local school districts. Rather than having the federal government tell you how to run your schools, this gives states more authority to make decisions that are right for their communities.
How do you feel about Common Core?
You know, Common Core, I think, as a standard makes sense. So you have kids who know what they're talking about.
There has to be a standard, not only to measure against other states, but against the rest of the world.
Exactly. But I think that in terms of how you implement it, there should be broad discretion for states and school districts, because what works well in a rural community in Yuma may not be what works well in urban Scottsdale.
That's the way it's designed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Common Core is not, it is simply a set of benchmarks.
That's right.
It's not a curriculum. They're not telling you this is what you must teach. All they're saying is a kid in 3rd grade needs to know this, 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 and this. How you get there is up to you guys.
That's right.
So why are we having a big fight over Common Core?
Well, I'm not.
I know you're not, but there is a big fight over this that people
Yeah.
think it's a government takeover of education.
You know, John, I think that sometimes issues that weren't intended to be political or partisan get politicized, because for many people, it's a very ideologically rigid environment. And as you and I both know at the state legislature, sometimes they like this idea of just fighting back and forth with each other. And that's, as you know, what I've been trying to break down my whole career is look for the areas where we agree and find common ground and solve problems there. Let's not spend all of our time arguing about the fringes.
I think on Common Core what happened was the government unfortunately tied funding to adopting these benchmarks. That made it look like, you know, when the government gets involved, the feds get involved, everybody thinks it's a government takeover of education. They probably shouldn't have tied funding to it as an incentive.
You know, that happened long before I got to Congress.
Right.
So.
But I think that may be what's poisoned the well on Common Core. And parents, you know, as a parent, there are some things that come home at night and you're like, oh my, you know, I mean, 2 + 2 is 2. Do we need to explain how we got there? You know, so that it is difficult. Let me ask you a little bit about, you're trying to tie up funding for terrorists.
That's right.
How are you going to do this? You're trying to shut the pipelines down of funding mechanisms for terrorist groups?
This is actually really important. So, I mean, everyone in Arizona knows about the threat that we face from ISIS or ISIL. What a lot of people don't know is that they have a revenue stream of about $1 million a day. And in fact, just last year, they made $45 million just by extortion through kidnapping. You know, one of our own, Kayla Mueller, formerly of Flagstaff and Prescott, was kidnapped by ISIS. She was held captive for 18 months. Her ransom was $6.6 million. And as we know, ultimately, Kayla lost her life at the hands of ISIS. These organizations are engaging in horrible, horrible terrorism, and they're using things like extortion and kidnapping, but also smuggling oil and building finances through those operations to fund their terrorist activities around the world. It is an immediate threat to the United States, and it's a growing threat. So I serve on a newly formed task force to help understand how these terrorist groups are engaging in their financing operations and building tools that we as Americans can use to shut down those spigots and to close off their opportunities to raise the funds they need to continue terrorism.
Is it through online stuff that they're
Some
raising?
of it's online, some of it's through the black market when they'll smuggle oil and sell it to another country. So part of what we have to do is figure out how do we work with other countries to make sure that they don't buy oil that's been smuggled through ISIS? How do we make it impossible for them to buy it? These are some of the things we're looking at. And I think you'll see in the coming weeks, I'll be introducing additional amendments and legislation to help turn off the spigot for these terrorist organizations.
We're going to take a quick break here on Newsmaker Sunday. When we come back, there have been rumors that Kyrsten Sinema might challenge John McCain for the U.S. Senate. You laugh. People are talking about it. You know, you've read the articles. We're going to talk about that and also the chance that your district may get carved up, District 9. We'll talk about that and more when Newsmaker Sunday continues. Elected in 2012, Kyrsten Sinema is our guest on Newsmaker Sunday. Can you believe you're 2 terms almost into this thing?
Isn't it crazy?
It seems like it's gone quickly.
Yeah, it has gone quickly, but I got to tell you, I get up each day and I just feel overwhelmed with gratitude.
How do you have time to train for triathlons?
I wake up around 3 in the morning. I wake up really early. Yeah.
What time do you go to bed?
I go to bed as early as I can.
Like 8 o'clock?
I wish. No, I'm still working usually. If I can make it to bed by between 9 or 10, I'm pretty happy.
You don't live in your office, do you?
Heavens, no.
So, I mean, a lot of guys do.
I would not ask the government to subsidize my housing. I pay for my own apartment.
Really?
Well,
because
yes.
you know a lot of these guys do this.
Yes, but you know, I don't want to ask anyone to come sit on my couch and you know, if you slept there, that's kind of dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have an apartment in Washington. And, you know, members of Congress are paid a healthy salary. And part of that is designed for, you know, the acknowledgement that you have to have a second home and, you know, helping support the economy.
You're back every weekend?
Every weekend.
Okay, now when that happens, just so people know, that travel's paid for by us or not?
So the federal government pays for your travel if you're going directly from your home city to Washington, D.C.
Isn't there legislation right now pending to try to clean up airline perks and not let these guys? There's something going on with that right
Actually,
now.
Paul Gosar and I are sponsors of that legislation. Yes. So we've introduced a bill just about a week ago that says that members of Congress shouldn't be able to use government dollars to pay for first-class airfare. You should pay for a coach seat just like everyone else.
You could fly first class. I mean, technically you could.
Oof, but I mean, why would you waste government dollars like that?
I'm sure it happens all the time.
Well, not by, I will tell you this.
They say
not by our
John Thune
delegation.
is one of the guys who's done this quite a bit?
You know, I don't even know him.
Okay.
But I can tell you this, the Arizona delegation, that's not how we roll. We all are in coach unless someone gets the, you know, complimentary upgrade.
Get bumped up.
But we all purchase coach tickets because we're stewards of the people's dollars. You can't waste it on a fancy ticket.
Well, we know that government employees do waste dollars, so it's not a crazy
the Arizona
idea.
delegation.
Okay, now just take me inside how this all works. The Arizona delegation gets together how often, where you sit down with not only the other congressmen, many of whom are Republicans, you all get together and sit down and talk about what issues you got to push for Arizona. Do you do that on a monthly basis?
We don't have it in a formal system, but I will tell you we do it informally every week because we're all on the plane together to Washington and we're all on the plane together home from Washington. So twice a week we all spend time with each other, but many of us work together much more frequently. As you know, Matt Salmon and I work together on a very, very frequent basis. Paul and I work together on legislation. Paul and Gosar and Ann Kirkpatrick work together because their districts touch. We all work together really well. I'm partnering with Martha McSally on some legislation around border security issues. So we work together closely, but we also do, on occasion, fun things together. So later this year, actually it'll be in June, Matt Salmon and I are hosting a happy hour to bring our members together.
Matt will not be partaking in the happy hour.
Well, sure. Everyone likes a good glass of water with a nice slice of lemon. But Matt's always happy, so that's an easy one.
That's true.
But we'll get together and, you know, our staffs will come and the members will come and just spend time being with each other and enjoying each other's company.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. Now, let me ask you, as you watch this situation in California with the water, we don't have a John Kyle in our delegation anymore, who is just an expert in water rights and water issues. Where does Arizona stand on water? How much concern is there among the delegation that this is an issue coming down the pike? Or are we in pretty good shape given what SRP and others set up years ago? Well,
I think there is grave concern, not just by members of the delegation, but by SRP, CAP, and other entities across the state. We do have to be vigilant to put Arizona's interests first because there are lots of competing interests in our region. And
everybody
as we know,
wants the Colorado River water.
That's right. That's exactly right. The good news is our delegation is unified in working together to solve this. And while Mr. Kyle is no longer a U.S. Senator, he does provide us with help and technical support and advice. And we see him all the time.
You do lean on him.
Oh, yes,
still.
Absolutely.
He helps.
And there's a wonderful coalition that's working together, headed by the Central Arizona Project, to try and find a bipartisan solution that reaches not just to Arizona, but our surrounding states.
Are we good on water right now for the foreseeable future?
You know, Arizonans have been good stewards of water. And the good news is we're not in a position like California.
We're not. In fact, our highest water use year goes back to the mid-'80s, believe it or not. Even though our population has grown.
We've become much more efficient.
Ag has decreased because we've built on a lot of that ag land. Ag uses up much more water than a person does. So.
Well, we've been more efficient than other states, and so I think we're in a better position than other states are right now, but we've got to be vigilant to prepare for the future, and that's why we're working in this broad-based coalition.
Okay, let me run tape number 4. I know you don't even want me to go there, but I'm going to. There's been rumors that you might challenge John McCain for the U.S. Senate.
I heard a rumor that you might challenge John McCain for the U.S.
Absolutely. She's playing a trick on you. She is playing a trick on you.
No, I read it on a blog.
You're trying to flip it. No, absolutely not.
You won't let me do it twice in one show?
No, absolutely
only once?
not. Is this a possibility?
You know, John, as I mentioned earlier...
Have you been approached?
Gosh, no. I wake up each day with incredible sense of privilege and honor to have the job that I have. I love serving in Congress, and it's my hope that the voters will allow me to continue to do the job. That's what I'm working for.
If he retires, is that a job you'd like to have?
Oh, John McCain's not retiring.
I know, not now. But, I mean, you know, he could keep going, I suppose, but I would think this would be the last hurrah.
I'm going to let you dig that hole, John, not me.
Okay. Before we break, there's talk about the census. It's going to potentially carve up your District 9, the newly formed district, which is hard to believe it's already. How much does this concern you that you could be a woman without a country, without a district?
You know, Arizona has been my home since the day I was born, and it'll always be my home. We don't know what the Supreme Court is going to do in the redistricting case, but if I spent my nights worrying about what could happen, gosh, I'd have a lot more wrinkles than I have. So what I'm doing is getting up each morning and doing exactly what I love to do, which is serve my constituents. And I'll keep doing that until or unless circumstances change.
So you just figure you will find a place to run and figure a way to continue to serve in Congress, whether it's exactly in that geographic location or not?
You know, I've tried to spend most of my adult life figuring out how to best serve my community, to serve Arizona.
Is politics the best way to do that?
You know, I think it is right now. But as you know, before I was in elected office, I was a social worker,
I know.
working with kids and families living in poverty like I lived in when I was a kid.
What was more satisfying?
Oh, I love what I'm doing now. You know what's great about the job I have now, John? I get to hire a whole team of social workers, and they go to work every day, and they get on the phone or on the internet or go in person, and they talk with government agencies and push them to do what's right for our constituents. And as you and I talked about earlier, sometimes federal agencies don't want to do what's right for constituents, but my social workers, that's what they do. It's the best job you could have because I've got a whole team of folks who think just like I do. How do I get through this bureaucracy and fix this problem for the person I care about?
It's a shame you got to work through that bureaucracy. We're back with Congresswoman Kyrsten Sinema on Newsmaker Sunday, the representative from District 9. Back in a moment. Back on Newsmaker Sunday, a couple minutes left with Kyrsten Sinema. Tape number 7. I want to ask you about this because this is an issue that states are grappling with. It's been kind of sweeping the country. What do you think of this fight for $15 for fast food workers?
Well, you know, here in Arizona, we're actually in a different position than many other states because we have an indexed minimum wage. In 2006, Arizona voters, by a fairly wide margin, passed a law that increased the minimum wage and then indexed it so that every year it goes up a bit. And I think that was a smart thing for the voters to do because it allows more Arizonans to have the money they need to pay rent and take care of their kids and put it back into the economy. I do support a federal minimum wage. I was a co-sponsor of a bill to increase the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour, which studies have shown that in a state like Arizona is enough to live on. But I think that the idea of a minimum wage federally makes sense as a floor, and it makes sense for states to take action on their own.
$15 for a fast food worker. I mean, that strikes me that you could end up driving jobs out of the economy because companies will say, where I used to have 6, I'm going to have to make do with 4. And where's the fairness for a manager who's been there and worked up to $15 an hour, where suddenly now the entry-level person's making that?
Yeah, I think those are valid points. I think those are valid points. You know, this conversation, the one that you just referenced, hasn't made it into Congress yet. The debate that we've been having over the last couple of years is a federal minimum wage of $10.10 an hour. And we haven't been able to reach an agreement on that. So I would say in terms of what's happening at the federal level, we should probably keep going where we're at right now and finish that discussion.
I know we're early talking about election stuff, but it is happening. We've had a lot of these candidates in town. I want to run video of Hillary Clinton. What is the sense within the Democratic Party about the level of excitement and eagerness to jump on board and support her?
You know, that's not something where I can say that I can speak with accuracy or expertise, because as you know, in the Democratic Party, just as in the Republican Party, there's a very broad range of opinions and ideas. And in the Republican Party, there's a very, very robust debate about lots of candidates. In the Democratic Party, there's a couple candidates in the race, and the field may not be over. I know Martin O'Malley is looking at getting into it. So I think it's important.
Bernie Sanders is in.
Bernie Sanders is in. And I think it's important to allow that robust debate to happen. The primary season isn't until next year. You know what's crazy, John, is that we're already in presidential fever, and it's only May.
Good to see you.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thanks so much.
Be well. And good luck in your next triathlon.
Thanks so much.
And we'll see you next week on Newsmaker Sunday. Thanks for being with us.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and get all the best videos from Fox 10.